in Platte County. My grandparents lived in Platte Woods. I went to Parents' Day Out here when I was a little girl. That was Mother's Day Out at that point. I went, I think, with Nikki to an Amy Grant concert with y'all's youth group when I was in high school because my youth group down the street didn't have a big enough group. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So thank you all so much for having me. I kind of want to tell you a little bit. I'm here to talk about gun policy in many different ways, not just policy, but actions that we can take and how we as people of faith can address some of the horrendous things that we're seeing going on in our lives. I want to start by saying I'm not here to talk about banning all guns or any of that. So my husband is a 25-year veteran of the U.S. military. I grew up shooting. I don't have any problem with that. I do think perhaps people should be trained, and there's definitely some things that we can do though, and there might be some limits, but that is not why I'm here. That's not what I'm here to talk about. I actually got involved with this right after the Parkland shooting happened. My daughter was 15, 16 at that point. My twins actually were, and she started having nightmares that she was going to be on the stage at Park Hill South, where she was currently in school and was very active in the theater department, and someone was going to come in and be shooting, and she was not going to be able to respond. And she had nightmares for about a week, and then she started organizing. And she and a bunch of youth from across the city got in touch via Instagram. They were DMing. They organized a walkout for 420, which is not we know that has in some areas a memory or a connotation, but it also is the anniversary of the Parkland shooting. And so they organized a huge walkout. I just saw it pop up on my Facebook memories at Gillen Park. She was asked to start the first Students Demand Action group in Kansas City. And I thought, well, heck, I need to get back off the sidelines and refine my voice as well. If she can do it, I can do it. Being a military spouse, I learned to be very non-political for a whole lot of years. So I became involved with Moms Demand Action, and I have been involved with Moms Demand Action in Kansas City and then wider through the state of Missouri. Since that point, I also lead the Peace and Justice Committee for the Episcopal Diocese of West Missouri. That the bishop asked me to do that, and so after the Uvalde shooting, she wanted to start focusing on gun violence. So I come at this from a couple of different angles, and I'm so excited to see you all as another faith community wrestling with some of these issues and wanting to learn more about them. So that's who I am. Rhonda suggested I start out by talking kind of about where we are in Missouri, what Missouri gun laws look like. As I think a lot of us found right after the Super Bowl shooting, they were a lot looser than most everybody assumed they were. We actually have very few regulations. We've been rolling them back for a lot of years in Missouri. We now at this point are 8th in the country in terms of the 8th highest rate of gun violence in the US, 5th highest in the rate of homicide, 10th in suicide. We're a pretty small state. That's not great. The cost of gun violence to every single person in this state, from those who are gun deaths and injuries, cost every individual in this state about $2,900. It costs, that $17.6 billion, and almost over $450 million of that's paid for by taxpayers. So this is not just something that is affecting our hearts and our families, but it's also affecting our pocketbooks. And where else could that money go in our state? Where could we pay our first responders more? Could we pay our teachers more? Could we invest in infrastructure if we weren't spending that money there? It's pretty wild. That, as we found, firearms are allowed to be carried by adults, anyone over 18, pretty much everywhere. We are allowed to open carry. That there are some rules about minors being given guns, but there's no rules about them possessing rifles or shotguns, long guns. There's rules about minors being able to carry handguns. There's rules about concealed carry, but you have to be 19 to receive a concealed carry permit. But our state has permitless carry, and for the most part, you can conceal carry most places without a permit. There aren't too many places that require it. There still are some, and there are people who get concealed carry permits, which require extra training, extra certification, background checks, etc. But 2016, we rolled back concealed carry. We have permitless carry in our state. We are kind of the Wild West. Until those people down by Union Station opened fire, they were doing nothing illegal in our state. The amount of guns they were carrying, the backpacks, everything they had, they were not doing anything illegal. The kids, the juveniles, were breaking some KCMO ordinances, but to be honest, we have preemption in our state, which means that the state legislature has said that there can no city or county jurisdiction can pass any laws that are more restrictive than the state has. So if someone were to challenge that, probably they would go down. That we, let's see, we are 38th out of 50 in terms of our gun restrictions. There are very few places that aren't. We are a net exporter of guns. Missouri's purchase laws are so lax that states around us that have a higher incidence of gun violence, they buy here and bring them out. Laws are that things are committed in other states, crimes that are committed with guns in other states, oftentimes are committed with guns bought in Missouri because it's easy to buy guns here. It's the same argument we are to our surrounding states what Gary, Indiana is to Chicago. You'll hear a lot of times, well, what about Chicago? It has some of the toughest gun laws in the world, in the country, but look at the rate of gun violence. What they fail to say is those people drive across the state line and there's one gun shop in Gary, Indiana, just across the state line, which has been found to have sold a massive number of the guns that are used in Chicago city gun violence. Because Indiana has far more lax gun laws than Illinois does. So we don't have any safe storage laws. We passed, you all may have heard this a few years ago, the Second Amendment Preservation Act. Basically, that was a federal nullification of gun laws. The Missouri State Legislature said, we don't want these crazy federal laws that might change and be more restrictive to come for Missourians' right to carry arms in all the times that I've just discussed. So, any law enforcement that upholds a gun law that does not have a matching law in Missouri can be fined $50,000 per instance for that law enforcement agency. That's had a chilling effect because the ATF is where we send ballistics. If we need to find out who committed a crime. That has a lot of the cooperation with city, county, and federal has been very much chilled because local law enforcement agencies don't want to be fined $50,000. Now, a year ago, the Missouri Supreme Court ruled that it was unconstitutional. It blatantly is. Federal law can't be preempted by state law. However, it is now making its way to the Supreme Court. There's been a stay on it, but other states are looking at what we did, and there's a few other states that are looking to pass that. We have a domestic violence loophole. When they passed permitless carry in 2016, federally, all people, misdemeanor through felony, domestic violence, convicted domestic violence offenders are no longer allowed to purchase weapons. In Missouri, they forgot and left out when they passed permitless carry because they rushed it through as on the last day of session. And so now if you're a misdemeanor domestic violence offender, you're still allowed to have your weapons. Well, as many in law enforcement have taught me, I've learned that a lot of things are pled down to misdemeanor. And a misdemeanor domestic violence offense is still pretty heinous. So they said, oh, we didn't mean for that to happen. We'll fix that next year. Well, they've been saying that since 2016 and they still haven't fixed it. And so the only places guns are illegal are if you are a felon in possession. Federal law would prohibit handguns or machine guns for minors. As I said, though, there's no legal requirement, age requirement for long guns that are not machine guns. So it is, the federal law prohibits a handgun or a machine gun for a minor.
You mean a non-minor can have a machine gun?
Technically, you're not supposed to, but even semi-automatic weapons, I believe, are mostly. But there is no. But the thing is, for shotguns and long guns, there's no age requirements at all. It is illegal for an adult to give the firearms technically to a minor, but the minor's not legally barred from having it. You're not allowed to be drunk or high in possession of a firearm. Currently, in Missouri, you are not allowed to have the possession in schools, federal buildings, stadiums and arenas, places of worship, an election precinct, amusement parks, bars, or if a sign is posted on a business. However, every year, Moms Demand Action that I'm involved with has been down and fought a Guns Everywhere bill. And a guns in churches. So there's one bill that has been a guns in churches and guns on public transportation. It passed last year, and it was only because our legislature was so dysfunctional that they had a massive meltdown at the very last week, and it didn't pass both houses last year, which would have forced concealed carry. And right now, as I said, you heard me say places of worship. Concealed carry would be allowed unless there was a large sign put on the outside of sacred spaces. Minimum 11 by 14 with minimum 1 inch, because they're very precise about this, minimum 1 inch type, saying no guns. Concealed no longer is it an opt-in? Right now a pastor can say, I feel comfortable. I know Joe over here is a law enforcement officer and we have a security committee and I'm comfortable with them carrying, and a pastor can make that decision on a case-by-case basis. Unless there's a large sign, if this were to pass, a pastor would have to make a decision on a case-by-case basis, or they would not have that discretion. Anyone with a concealed carry permit would be allowed. Also, on buses and any non-federal, non-Amtrak trains. That was moving through again this year until the shooting down in the Union Station. And they decided to stop moving that one. However, Guns Everywhere, we have fought against for years and years. My brother owns a sports bar. Who in their right mind thinks giving, there's enough bar fights as there is. Do not bring guns into it. Don't bring guns onto college campuses. Who thinks that, someone riding the Patriot at Worlds of Fun, having a gun fall out of their pocket would be a good idea? I mean, again, they just had to put a curfew in for kids. Those have been, our already weak gun laws, they've been trying to weaken them. That's where things stand in our state. So, pretty grim, and I apologize for starting with that. But what can we do about it? There's a couple of different organizations, and there's a couple of different things that I've been involved with. First, I've been involved with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense. As I said, since the Parkland shooting, or not too long thereafter. Moms Demand Action is part of the Everytown. It's an organization that works only directly with data and statistics. In fact, this gun violence in Missouri overview is a data and statistic filled form with footnotes, because everything Moms does can be backed up with data, because we've got to find best solutions to things, not just what we think will work. And Moms Demand Action in Missouri tends to fight against these continuing weakening of our gun laws. In other states, they fight for things like an extreme arrest protection order. You've probably heard of it called a red flag law, where you can, if there's someone in my life who I am concerned is going to be harmful or harm to themselves or other, I can petition a court to have their guns taken away, as can law enforcement officers. It goes through the courts. It's not, we actually had someone, they passed an anti-red flag law in our state just this year. The anti-red flag law says, even if there's a national red flag law, yeah, SAPA whole thing, that's on hold, but if there's a red flag law in our state, it's illegal in Missouri. They passed a law making illegal a law that we don't have. It's just saying, just to be clear, we don't want that. Right. But it saves lives. There are Moms Demand Action advocates against more guns in schools. That school protection officers, sure, school resource officers, trained law enforcement. I get it. Absolutely. I've got a kid at Park Hill South, and I had two that graduated. But maybe not, we don't want to arm the janitor and the teachers. And the teachers don't want to be armed because they don't want to have any possibility of having to pull a firearm on their children that they're there to care for and to teach. It's just, plus in some places where they've had them, people have been known to leave it in the men's room. Well, that kind of doesn't help if you leave your weapon in the men's room. So Moms Demand Action also works with community groups, community violence interruption groups. There's a lot of violence interruption initiatives in the Kansas City area where they're doing the hard work in areas particularly that are prone to high rates of city gun violence on a almost block by block way to stop that cycle of violence. You show up at the hospital when someone's been shot to stop the retaliation. It's hard work. It's expensive work. We could fund that work, maybe with the amount of money that we're spending now responding to people who have been shot or killed with guns. We could start violence interruption. That's a huge thing. So Moms Demand Action works with community partners like that, works with community partners like Casey Mothers in Charge. They show up after every shooting to comfort the families and to give care to the moms. So that's that organization. Another thing that Moms Demand Action does, it also does, obviously advocacy down in Jefferson City. It does things like this. I didn't wear, you guys may have seen people in their red Moms Demand Action t-shirts. I didn't wear that today because I thought thoughts and prayers. I am all for thinking, I'm all for praying, but I think we need to have action with our prayers. That's probably why you all are here today too, as part of a justice committee. But there's another program called Be Smart, and it's part of the Everytown umbrella, the data research, Moms Demand Action, but it's a completely non-political. You may have seen it if you go to the health and safety fair at the YMCA.
What's it called again, Jen?
Be Smart.
Okay.
In fact, I brought some Be Smart cards I can hand out to everyone. Be Smart is, I have a full 20-minute presentation. It is all about safe storage. We don't have any safe storage laws in our country, but you know what? There are gun suicides make up over half of the gun deaths in our state. Over half. And in our country. And firearms are the leading cause of death of children and youth in both our state and our country. There are things that can be done. Things like locking up firearms if you have children in the house or young people. Recognizing signs of suicide. If your children are going on a play date, going over, or asking, just like my child's allergic to peanut butter, do you have dogs? By the way, do you have any unsecured weapons in your house? If so, would you mind making sure they're locked in a gun safe? Or maybe not, we'll just have the play date at my house. Because we don't want to be like that 5-year-old little boy yesterday morning who shot himself in the head. Yesterday, here in Kansas City, who found a firearm in his house that was unsecured. It wasn't a suicide. It was an unintentional shooting. And I'm very intentional about that word. It wasn't an accident. Accidents can't are something that really can't be prevented. It was unintentional because nobody wanted it to happen, but boy, it could have been prevented if that firearm would have been locked up. We partner with organizations to give out gun locks. One church that I gave the Be Smart presentation to, as my hat with the Peace and Justice Committee of the Episcopal Diocese, I give Be Smart presentations to Episcopal churches across the western half of the state. We figured it was the low-hanging fruit and the least politically disruptive. We also have people that go and testify, that go to Advocacy Day with Moms Demand Action, but we decided to start talking about the low-hanging fruit and safe storage. And one church got a whole bunch of gun locks, and they have it sitting on their coffee hour table with a sign just that's a little bit bigger but looks like this. And we also have tons and tons of handouts talking to your children about gun. I didn't bring enough for everyone, but if anyone wants to look and see what they are, things like what does safe storage look like? How to talk to your children about firearms, because this is for adults. It's always an adult's responsibility to keep firearms out of the hands of children. It's not children's responsibility not to touch. That's good. I was taught not to touch it. Our guns were in a glass front case. It wasn't locked. But fortunately, that wasn't something we were considering. With the rates of youth mental health problems in our country right now, with the rates of just everyone struggling, not just youth in our country, being able to securely store guns and secure them away from people who may be looking at self-harm is a Christian thing to do. I mean, so until someone can get help. So so those are some of the types of programs, the things that I've been involved with, and what I've been doing with our diocese. We also have I'm part of a greater coalition of gun violence prevention advocates in Kansas City. Moms Demand Action on both sides of the state line, Grandparents Against Gun Violence, getting ready for Wear Orange. Wear Orange is coming up the first full weekend in June. June 7th is the actual day of Wear Orange. And what it is that there was a young woman who was from Chicago. She marched in the inauguration parade for President Obama. You all might remember this news story. And then a couple of weeks later was home and was outside in her area in Chicago and was killed by a stray bullet. And her name was Hadia Pendleton. Her favorite color was orange. And so Wear Orange, June 7th, has become National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And it's commemorated to think about victims and survivors of gun violence. Again, a very non-political thing. We know that they exist, whether or not we agree with what the solutions are as to how to address it. Although looking at the data, there's a lot of solutions out there that I would advocate for, but in a non-political way, that's there. We have a coalition. I sent this on to Rhonda, who can share it here, but it is something that's going to be distributed to faith communities across the city, turning thoughts and prayers into a week of action for gun safety against gun violence. It has everything from learning about the scourge of gun violence, learning about Be Smart and safe storage, learning about what gun violence looks like where we are, contacting your representatives about an assault weapons ban. I see that that's there. I believe I saw that was there on yours. I know it's there. The Episcopal General Convention has a load of resolutions about gun violence. So I'm only acting within the confines of what my faith tradition and yours has said are common goals we should go for. And then finally, there is on Sunday, Wear Orange to Church. We're going to be asking churches to show up and, to have, maybe if they have orange vestments, if you all use vestments, orange flowers, ask parishioners to wear orange. And there's a set of prayers. They're prayers, we call them prayers of the people at the Episcopal Church, probably something similar, plus some collects that are kind of almost a choose your own adventure, that they can be picked and choose and added into services by those planning church leaders, and to familiarize people with all the things that can be done. So those are kind of the things that we're doing, that I'm doing. I think I've taken up my time.
No, you're good. We started late.
Yeah, and as she said, I thank you. By the way, I forgot to say from the start, thank you all so much for coming early. I had a massive conflict this evening, and 2 days ago they put out, well, this is what really this looks like tonight. So if you're not doing this, you don't have to do this. And I was like, really? So my conflict has disappeared, but the organizers decided, since we'd already put this time out, to come early. So thank you all for accommodating me. But what can I do? What questions can I answer? What kind of discussion can we have about this issue?
Question, are the data you've been giving us, which are very helpful, are those available on your website?
Yes, it is. Everything that I'm happy to share.
I'll send everything that Sarah sent me.
Yeah, and I will say, so every.
And I'll also send you the link to Mom's Man.
Right. Well, this is from Every Town Research. So every stat. So both Moms Demand or Every Town. Excuse me, I just ate my own hair. Every Town, Every Stat Research. And if you'd like to, I pass this around and look at it. I've got it downloaded to my computer. Giffords is also a really, really good organization founded by Gabby Giffords, the congresswoman who was shot in the face at a campaign event in Arizona. And Giffords has very good research as well. I have Sandy Hook Promise. I pull research from a lot of different places, and you'll see here, this is pulling from the CDC, it's pulling from Johns Hopkins. It's all peer-reviewed data sources. What else? Thoughts?
That's strange.
Yeah.
So, do you feel like and I don't know if you guys talk about this stuff or not, it's Moms Demand Action. Do you feel like the name is limiting people who might be interested in doing that?
Moms Demand says mothers and others. There's also under the banner is Mayors Against, and under the Every Town banner is also Mayors Against Illegal Guns, which Mayor Bloomberg helped found when he was still a mayor. The organization started, the founder, this is a long answer to your question, but the founder sat down after Sandy Hook with her 5 small kids at home and said, what can I do? And she kind of patterned it on MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And so that's kind of where the name came from. But there's lots of men involved in Moms Demand Action. In fact, the executive director of Every Town is a man. But this was but in fact, the woman who founded Moms Demand Action is a Mizzou grad.
Oh,
Yeah. So it's mothers and others. There's all sorts of T-shirts and buttons about man enough to be a mom. So trying to lightheartedly address that.
Do you guys do any work with the school districts, like using a Park Hill South kid? Do you guys do anything?
We're trying.
With? Okay.
That we actually have. So there have been the Kansas City Be Smart leads. So I do the Be Smart things through the Episcopal Church, but there's a full Be Smart team for the Kansas City area, and they have made presentations to the school board multiple times. If you do look at the safety and security section on the website, that actually you'll see Be Smart there. It's in the North Kansas City schools, the Liberty Public Schools, and when the kid took the gun to Lakeview. They found in his backpack a couple of years ago. A friend of mine screenshotted and sent to me. Lakeview sent out in their parent communication text messages the Be Smart graphics. We have Be Smart. Be Smart's either a 20-minute presentation, or we have handouts, data, social media graphics. I've got articles that can go in bulletins and newsletters. I've got it covered. If you want to spread the Be Smart message in however way, whether or not it's to an adult Sunday school or the children's Sunday school parents group, or you just want to put, the Be Smart graphic or data graphic about gun violence in your church bulletins. So,
Question.
Yeah.
Is it understood about the gun ban at churches? Because what if you don't have a sign?
well, right now, you're not, that if, say, someone were to walk in with a gun, and they didn't leave when they were told, they could be arrested and told to leave, just like in a bar. Most people who carry know what the laws are. As I said, pastors can make that determination on a case-by-case basis at this point. A lot of churches do have a sign, but also in some churches, it can be quite triggering if you have been a victim of gun violence or you've experienced gun violence in your family to walk into a place of solace and sanctuary, to go past a big sign that talking about guns or with a gun on it saying no guns, when you're going there looking for solace from that. So, plus I go to the Episcopal Cathedral downtown. We're a downtown urban church. We have paid security. I don't know if you all do here too, but we definitely do, in uniform. And we really need to make sure that nobody is coming in with guns, because too many people have too many ideas. So, where we are, it's a pretty big deal, and law enforcement will be called immediately. Just like when my brother's bar, if someone sitting on a bar stool had a gun fall out of his pocket, law enforcement got called and those people were issued out the door.
You wouldn't know that they were concealing necessarily. Right?
No. Well, on the other hand, he knows that there are people concealing, carrying into the bar. Absolutely. No, you wouldn't, unless they were trying to make a point about it. We had a parishioner who was a FBI agent. He had to carry at all times. But we knew that. And he was federal law enforcement.
Well, and you also have law enforcement officers who don't want to be put in a position where they can't do something about a situation that should interrupt.
But more than likely, they have had, one, they're trained, and two, they probably had that conversation with the safety committee, the pastor, whomever. Again, it's not illegal if the pastor allows it. It's just illegal, if I decided I was going to pull the Enfield rifle, which is the only gun we currently own right now, and they haven't made ammunition for it since the 40s. It's in my basement. I can walk into church with it. If I didn't leave, they could have me arrested for being in a place of worship with a weapon. But if I walked around downtown Kansas City with it outside, no problem. Yeah, no, you wouldn't know. And there are some reasons to get a concealed carry permit these days. But right now, permitless carry means no training. You don't have to have training. Right now, you all might have just heard that they just increased the definition of who is a gun dealer, which is a big deal, because we actually did pass 2 years ago the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. It was the first any kind of gun law that has been passed federally in 20 years. But right now there's what's called the gun show loophole. If you're not a licensed firearms dealer, then you don't have to get a background check to sell a firearm. Now, they've just increased it. If you are primarily earning money from selling, you're not going up to KCI Expo Center when they are having a gun show every other week, it seems, and you're selling on Facebook Marketplace. If you're selling guns, you've got to get a license. If my uncle wanted to pass my dad's gun, or my brother wanted to pass my dad's guns on to my son within a family, we can transfer those, not a problem. There doesn't have to be a background check. We don't have to register anything. You don't have to get a permit to purchase here. Some states you do. And the states that have the common sense gun regulations put into place have a far lower percentage of gun deaths than we do in Missouri. We've become the Wild West.
I have another question.
Yeah.
The executive order that President Biden just signed this week, I think it was.
That's the one that changes the definition on who is a gun dealer.
Okay, and when does that go into effect?
Oh, you got me there. Hopefully immediately.
Okay.
No, when does it go into effect?
It's a long time.
Okay.
What we would want to consider a long time, it's not like next month or the next month, it's 6 or 8 months.
Well.
And it may not be in effect by the time it would go into effect.
Well, that's true too.
It's elected because that's the problem with that.
Yes. Yes. Well, and it's an executive order, so an executive order can be overturned.
Yes.
But that's where we are right now because it's a hot button issue and they're never going to get 60 people in the Senate to agree to it. Although they were able to get it with at least the laws that they passed 2 years ago. They did something. I mean, there's also the boyfriend loophole for domestic violence. Now, that domestic violence is if you have a shared child or you're married to them, but if you're just a boyfriend and they're stalking you, is it truly domestic violence? And then therefore, does it count against them not being able to have a firearm? So, there's a lot of things. One other thought I want to leave you with, though, that's a really, really important safety thought to think about, and this goes with the Be Smart presentation and teaching, is that guns are uniquely lethal in suicide. I was shocked when I learned that 90 to 95% of all suicides that are attempted with a gun are completed. 90 to 95% of suicides that are attempted with a gun are completed. Less than 10% are otherwise. Less than 10% if you by any other means than a gun. And 70% of people who attempt suicide once never attempt it again. So having a firearm available when the kid comes home from school and they broke up with the girlfriend or they didn't make the basketball team and they make that split-second decision, particularly for our youth, having a firearm available literally is the matter between life and death. That's why this is important. Well, one of the reasons.
Thank you so much, Tara. Thank you for being here.